Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to the second panel discussion on U.S. port modernization. Some of those issues came out in this recent discussion, and I'd like to introduce the next panel. First, we'll hear from Paul Anderson, the Executive Director of Jack's Port. Paul has previously served as a member of the U.S. Maritime Commission and was selected to lead our port in 2010, followed by Kirk Nagel, who is the Executive Director of America's Association of Ports Authorities, with the responsibilities of representing and advocating for all the nation's ports. And then we'll hear from David Lee Latique, who is the Port Director for Government Relations for LA Port, and also Patty Gutzkow, right? Did I say it right? Gutzkow, who is Senior Consultant with Siemens. And so, Paul, we'll hear from you.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brown. I will, I'm not having any slides here, but I do have, for your reference, my comments before are in the tab here at Jack's Port. Yes, sir.
Just on that, just so you all know, we do have all the findings are in your resource guide. So the slide presentation that Mayor Foster did and John Martin and others is in your resource guide. So you do have the data to take back with you.
Thank you again, Mayor Brown. Again, my comments are in the tab there under Jack's Port from my October 26 testimony to the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. I will summarize from some of my testimony and then also speak to some of the issues and recommendations that I brought to the Transportation Infrastructure Committee. But first, I want to say that just thank you to the U.S. Conference of Mayors and Tom and Mayor Brown, Mayor Villarosa, for bringing this to Jacksonville, but more importantly, for recognizing the importance that exports and ports play in our country's economy. And it is just, I think you're getting a feel here from just the first several speakers of how vital and how critical our infrastructure and our gateway infrastructure in the United States, that being our ports, is to the economic vitality of the United States. You know, Mayor Foster, I welcome your comments. I am originally from Southern California. When I served on the Federal Maritime Commission, I had a chance, several opportunities to get tours from your staff. And LA Long Beach is a model of what the United States can do when they invest the proper amount of investment into a major port region. I also had an opportunity to get on one of your large post-Panamax gantry cranes. I don't think Long Beach has ever been the same since, but you know, your ports have different challenges than our ports on the East Coast, and I think it's really important to note that you know that all of you, most of you, are representing cities. And as a seafaring nation, I think it's very important for us to remember the history of our country. We grew up as a seafaring nation. We became the best seafarers in the world, the maritime nation that made the nation what it is today. Not just on the open seas in context of controlling the oceans, but in the commerce of our country. In most of the cities in the United States, even with the exception of possibly Mayor Smith, in his city grew up around a port, not the other way around. Those cities are there, and including on our great inland waterway system, are there because it was we have the best natural system of rivers and inland waterways of anywhere in the world. And in the past, we have operated those, and I think it was pointed out earlier that some of those investments now are 50 and 60 years old, and particularly when you look on the inland waterways, the locks, the dams, and our country today is operating on the infrastructure that our grandparents built. Think about that. And I think it's incumbent upon this generation and all the mayors around this table and in your conference to advocate to our national leaders that it's time for this generation to build the infrastructure for our grandchildren today. We are operating in a global economy, as you saw from those numbers. Many of those ports in the top 10 were not ports 20 years ago in China. You go 20 years ago, 7 of those ports were not on that list because they didn't exist. Yet, we can talk we hear from the Corps about the locks and the North Olmsted locks. They've been working on those for 20 years. The cost started out at about $100 million. They're probably up over $600 or $700 million. That lock fails, you shut down the Mississippi River. You shut down our biggest share of exports to the rest of the world, of our grain, our steel. Our country needs to invest in our gateway infrastructure, our ports, our intermodal infrastructure, not just our highways. We talk about the transportation reauthorization that you all are closely watching, and for good reason. It's critical to our country. But the problem with ports is that we don't have a component in the transportation reauthorization bill. There is no maritime section. We are funded typically through water projects in America's ports through the Water Resource Development Act. We haven't had known as WARDA. We haven't had a WARDA bill in this country since 2007. Meanwhile, right here in the mayor's port, the citizens of this community, we have 2 major projects. One's $40 million. The other is $500 million, the deepening of our channel. They're going to take longer. We identified those projects in 2003. If we're lucky and everything goes right in Washington according to their schedule, what are the chances of that happening? Those projects will be, one will be completed in 2014, the $40 million project. We identified that. That's a navigational hazard. $40 million project in 2003. The other one, our deepening, we started in 2003. That is, according to the Army Corps schedule, will be completed in 2018. Mayors, the country of Panama spent $5.2 billion. They had to have a national referendum. Think about that. Mayor from Long Beach just was sharing with us their capital plan is $4.5 billion for one port. So when you have a country, a third world country, effectively, Panama, identified they needed to expand the Panama Canal. They did so through a national referendum. They had to vote on it to borrow those dollars because they didn't have that money. They will complete the Panama Canal sooner than our country because we need a congressional authorization and we need an appropriation and we have to have 7 different federal agencies review our $40 million project. They will complete the largest, most game-changing project on the planet, Panama, faster than our country can do a $40 million navigation project on our river that will allow us to accept ships on our channel 24/7. Today we can only come in 4 hours twice a day with the post-Panamax ships. And that says a lot about what is wrong with our country and about transportation infrastructure. I brought these very similar comments to our members of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. And I truly believe that members of Congress are serious about infrastructure. But I think that their system right now is broken. And I think with your lending your voice to the American Association of Port Authorities, of which I'm a proud member, joining together with you, hopefully governors, maybe the National Conference of State Legislators, and others, we can break through the gridlock in our United States Congress to push them to formulate a national transportation policy and a national freight policy. And I have some suggestions for that. And there are some very detailed suggestions in my testimony, in my comments here in your book. And I'll highlight a few of them. But one, I will just give you a specific example. The state of Florida home of 15 ports. We just, for the first time ever last year, adopted a statewide freight policy, and that's what our country needs. And that identified where our critical investments would be needed, how to prioritize the limited dollars that we have. It also very important to what we're doing, 30 seconds, very important to what we're doing is talking about public-private partnerships. We need to have incentivize those. We need to move, I suggest a national maritime policy be adopted. I would ask for your support in that. I will continue to work with the Mayor Brown, and your staff to promote some very specific policy recommendations for moving these critical issue forward. And we just will do everything to work hand in hand with the U.S. Conference of Mayors to make sure that this issue is addressed with our national leaders. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's give Paul a hand for that. Now we'll hear from David. You got 3 minutes. 3 minutes. We want to stay on time. We want to get back on time. 3 minutes, please.
I'll be brief because a lot of what I was going to comment on was covered by Mayor Foster. I'm David Libatique. I'm the Senior Director of Government Affairs for the Port of Los Angeles. The Port of Los Angeles is a proprietary department of the City of LA. We're the largest container port in the United States. We had moved 7.9 million TEUs last year and had a record year for exports. With respect to port modernization, I'd like to talk about 3 difficult episodes that John Martin talked about during his comments. San Pedro Bay ports, as Mayor Foster noted, account for about $287 billion of economic impact to the nation. We touch cargo to and from every single congressional district in the contiguous United States. The weight of our role in the economy was probably most powerfully demonstrated in 2002 during that 10-day ILWU lockout. And that cost the national economy about $1.5 billion a day, or a total of $15.6 billion. Fast forward to today, we actually have both the ports of LA and Long Beach commissioners that are with the ILWU. I think everyone remembers how damaging that episode was. Our particular commissioner is sitting on top of, chairing a port efficiency task force, and the 2 commissioners are some of the most vocal proponents of port growth we have locally. And the ILWU actually joins us, as mentioned by John Martin, joins us in the U.S. West Coast collaboration when we advocate in D.C. for a national freight policy, and echo some of the comments that Paul Anderson made. The other episode is back in 2004, as John also mentioned, the meltdown. I wish we had a better and more euphemistic term for what happened in 2004 with the congestion that occurred, but that left a lasting impact on the local business community. And so they realized how many jobs are impacted by diversion, how many jobs are related to trade in Southern California. And that organization and that kind of unified attention towards the impact that ports have on the regional economy sustains itself. It's evolved into a consensus group. So the regions in Southern California got together and they've identified key port projects, about 65 of them, that are going to facilitate, that'll make us more competitive, facilitate goods movement through the region. The last thing I wanted to mention is the third component, also touched on by Mayor Foster, which is that the port got sued. Back in the late 90s, the state of California determined that diesel emissions were a carcinogen and basically sued one of our major terminal expansions, China Shipping. That project, we eventually settled. That project went forward, and we needed to create a framework to move forward with future port projects. We did that with the Clean Air Action Plan adopted under the leadership of Mayor Villaraigosa and Mayor Foster in 2006 by both ports, and that provides a framework for moving forward. And actually, our terminal developments, we have reached an accord with a lot of the local community and environmental groups on our terminal projects. We recently had a community meeting for one of our major terminals, APL. The community meeting lasted about 30 minutes. That has to be a record for public input on a major terminal expansion at Port of Los Angeles. The reason I raise these 3 issues is we have pretty good alignment right now. Environmental, business, labor community around port growth, what it means to our economy, what it means to competitiveness. It took work. But especially in this economic environment, you can get pretty good alignment at the local and regional level about how important ports are to the national economy. Where that conversation begins to break down is when you start getting to the national discussion. And we could all have this, I think, Mayor Brown, when we talked, you'd said your local business community and your constituents are also very much in support of port growth. I think all of us could have that same discussion with our local business community and labor community, but at the national level, it's hard to admit that port growth and investment of the federal government, it's more parochial than we're willing to admit. There is going to be growth. There is going to be a game changer in the Panama Canal. What we have to get to is do what Canada has done, getting local, state, provincial, and federal alignment. And we're missing that federal piece. And it's because no one wants to have that discussion about winners and losers. It's a very difficult discussion to have. And I think